If you look carefully, you would notice there is something unusually elegant about these 8 shots, or more accurately, 4 pairs of mirrored shots. Don't get it? Then get a small tip from the movie.
Keep your eyes on the trees.
On the surface, it might seem that Scofield told that to Blake, since they're entering enemy's territories, so they should be cautious. But it appears it could be said to the audience as well. Just prior to this particular phrase, the smooth movement of a film camera is suddenly interrupted. From the long side view portrayal of the characters, it quickly shifts to the position where a lonely bare tree appears in the center of the scene, as if it was the third character of a movie. And once the camera is repositioned, Scofield brings specific attention to the isolated tree. But why? As always, be aware of the spoilers, stay tuned and roll the disclaimer. The way those 4 pairs of shots are mirrored with each other is not random. If you put all of them together on the timeline of a film, the timestamps when the trees appear are nearly symmetrical. This literature technique is called a chiastic structure, also known as a ring structure. The easiest way to visualize the ring structure is through letters A, B, C, C apostrophe, B apostrophe, A apostrophe, each representing a certain idea. The series of these ideas are then repeated in the second half, but the opposite order. Technically, 1917 consists of 2 apparent shots, so if you were wondering why Sam Mendes, director of a movie, used a direct cut in the middle of a film, then the possible answer might be that this cut was the pivotal moment when all the events are reversed. It's a common type of story structure in both movies and books. While there are many ways of how the technique can be used, the one we are going to talk about is the use of chiastic structure in the narrative motifs. Essentially, a motif is any recurring element that has symbolic significance in a story. Ideas are always abstract and can be illustrated visually, so when the author wants to present the main theme of a story, she or he uses a physical object that resembles this theme through its frequent repetition. One of the greatest examples of motifs is eyeballs. The eyeball motifs occur throughout the films like Blade Runner, The Great Gatsby, and even The Lord of the Rings. In some cases, eyeballs would be a reflection of a human soul, a great divide between humans and machines. In others, they are reminders of the approaching danger or constant surveillance, like it was in the novel 1984, where every human is monitored by Big Brother. Anyways, the narrative motif is a powerful tool in the hands of narrator, and it seems that Sam Mendes took full advantage of the trees to symbolize his own theme. But what is this theme? The first time we see the tree in 1917 is at the very start of the story. One of the main characters, Scofield, is introduced lying on the ground under the oak tree. I'm not reinventing the wheel by saying that the symmetrical moment with an oak tree appears again during the ending. 2 moments don't feel the same because they aren't. A whole point of a ring structure is to clearly demonstrate the character development. After all, even if the setting where we started is the same at the end, characters still change regardless of the outside world. In other words, to understand how exactly Scofield has changed, let's define the symbolism of an oak tree. Oak trees have a strong symbolism in many mythologies all over the world. They are not easily destroyed, and in time their strength only grows. In ancient times, people used to make wands from oak trees that had been struck by lightning. They believed in the saying, lightning never strikes in the same place twice, so used these wands as talismans for protection from any kind of disaster. It means that deciduous trees were shown only during a moment of peace, when all characters are safe. Oppositely, the bare trees are a signal of a death when all characters are surrounded by danger. By having the capacity to survive tough times, such as war, oak trees represent resistance and strength, as well as longevity and will for life. Due to its longevity, the oak tree is considered storage of ancient wisdom, the wisdom which is gained through centuries of gaining knowledge, the wisdom which helps to make wise decisions that will benefit not only the person's life, but also the lives of others, especially the younger generation. Younger generation? Huh.
Master Skywalker, there are too many of them.
At one point, both soldiers come across a grove of burnt-out cherry trees, which were demolished by the retreating enemy. One expresses dismay at the meaningless act of destruction,
So these ones will goners.
but the other offers insight that the fallen seeds are going to spread, and eventually the orchard may grow and produce even more cherries in the future.
They'll grow again when the stones rot.
Sounds as a timeless metaphor for a younger generation rising from the ashes of an old generation, which is for a good reason. In Japanese culture, cherry blossoms, also known as sakura, are a symbolic flower of a spring that represent 2 different natures of life. First is the renewal nature of human existence. During the World War II, Japanese kamikazes, people who committed suicide, were called cherry blossom squadrons because they believed that their death will bring renewal to the world. Death is an inevitable part of human lives. Still, it never means the end, but the new beginning.
Part of the journey is the end.
Just before the encounter with the cherry blossoms, Blake and Scofield talk about the tin medal Scofield sold out for a bottle of wine. Blake blames him for not bringing a medal back home to his family. Meanwhile, Scofield reveals that he hated being at home because he was afraid that his family won't see him ever again.
I hated it. When I knew I couldn't stay. When I knew I had to leave, and they might never see me.
This situation is reversed in the second half of the movie just after the next appearance of the cherry tree. We see soldiers sitting together and listening to the country song Wayfaring Stranger. In general, the song is about death, a man dying to see his family.
I'm going there, no more to roam.
For Scofield, this breathtaking moment is a moment of realization. His mindset and outlook on being with his family have drastically changed. From "there is no peace for me and my family because I'm afraid to die before it's over" to "I'm not afraid to die if there is a peace for the family after it's over." Right now, everything can seem grim, but he understands he must complete a mission and a war first to ensure a brighter future where a new generation will prosper. In the process, millions of people might die, it is true, as those dead trees were foreshadowing the tragic death of Blake. However, these deaths were not in vain. All the sacrifices made by the soldiers are for younger people that are going to create a better future for humanity without wars. That's why Blake's death is mirrored with Scofield stumbling upon a French woman hiding out from German soldiers with an infant. Him giving her all the food and the milk he possesses visualizes the importance of children. As long as you fight for them rather than yourself, the wheel of life will literally help you to survive. A tin medal comes back into play in a powerful way. For a dead soldier, the only thing left of a whole life is a small tin medal to be collected by the loved ones. But it's meaningful because it stands for being remembered by those who come and live after us.
Sorry, what?
The second symbolic representation of the cherry blossoms is the fleeting nature of life. Sakura trees' lifetime is extremely short. Their beauty peaks around 2 weeks and then they fall. In other words, life is short, especially on the battlefield where death awaits anyone. However, no one talks depressively about the cherry blossoms. Instead, humans just enjoy the beauty of their leaves. The same applies to the theme of 1917. History retained knowledge about an early Christian saint named Saint Sebastian. As a man with the wrong faith, during the Emperor Diocletian's persecution of Christians, Saint Sebastian was tied to a post of a tree with 2 arrows in his body. It was later discovered that Saint Sebastian survived the inescapable death. Since then, his artistic depiction is considered symbolic of the strength and courage in the face of adversity. The tree to which he was tied to apparently had a connection with his mystic survival. That's how a Japanese writer Yukio Mishima described the symbolic power of Sebastian's tree in his book Confession of a Mask. There it stood, that tree, perfect, exquisitely rough, but not losing any of nature's grace and artlessness, keeping serene silence as though it itself were its own creator, and yet, at the same time, it assuredly was a created thing, maybe a musical composition, a piece of chamber music by a German master. Music giving such religious, tranquil pleasure that it can only be called sacred, filled with the solemnity and longing found in the patterns of stately walled tapestries. Now, if you replace the tree with human existence, it would perfectly fit into the theme of life's fleeting nature. Humans are indeed nature's creation, but at the same time, we provide continuation to ourselves, being our own creators. Life might seem artless and small as chamber music, but if you look closer, you might find it as meaningful and attractive as the music of German master. This awareness is the second major transformation of Scofield's character, because previously he abhorred staying at home. Instead of grumbling about the short time Scofield had with his family, he needed to appreciate the time spent together. Just like Saint Sebastian didn't suffer the pain from 2 arrows, because at the same time he was enjoying the beauty of his life. Finally, back to the oak tree. The largest difference between the first and the last shots is that the former depicts Scofield in the shade of an oak tree, and the latter on the sunny side as if he was staring at the brighter future. Scofield is also seen with the picture of his family, which is the climax of his development. You see, the ending of 1917 is more likely to have a pessimistic and sad continuation. For the entire movie, there was one ultimate goal: to call off this one attack on one day of a war to save 1,600 people. Obviously, Scofield succeeded, so we see that the long walk across the dead bare trees from the beginning is mirrored with his long walk on the green background upon the end. everyone is injured, but at least they're alive and might still see the family. However, the Colonel McKennis warned that although this time the trap was avoided, he might still receive an order to attack again on the next day, meaning the established peace is only temporary. In the interview, 1917's co-writer Wilson Cairns said, "I think the thing is, when he sits down by that tree, if you know some stuff about the war, you know that in 1917 the war wasn't over, there is another year to it. I think when Scofield sits down against that tree and he looks at his family and you know that he has something to go home for, I think there is a determination in him that you think, yes, this man will live, but you are never told whether or not he does." 1917's story isn't about the event that led to the conclusion of a war or a victory. We never actually get to see any backstory for any character, because 1917 wasn't filmed to depict certain heroes of a war. It's one day of a harsh reality of a war, where people consciously go to death for protecting the future of humanity, families, and kids. And the most terrifying thing is if all of that was for nothing. When Saint Sebastian survived the execution, he was back at Diocletian's palace with the criticism, ready to rebuke him for the evils he inflicts on the servants of Christ. But the emperor just had Sebastian clubbed to death. He might return as many times as possible, as well as cherry blossoms might still grow back. But if the war never stops and nothing never changes, they're just going to die again and again. 1917 is a warning sign for the dangers of allowing the past to repeat itself. Sam Mendel's film serves as a reminder of why we must be so invested in preventing future generations from experiencing the horrible devastations of the wars and other mistakes done in the past. Otherwise, there will be no beauty left on Earth and eventually human life itself. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, you would significantly help me with the growth of my channel by hitting the like button and subscribing to not miss anything new. Share your opinion about 1917 in the comments, and don't forget to check out my other videos by clicking on the links in the description or the upper right corner of your screen. So long, and thanks for all the fish!